Welcome to Ground Truth. Join Sam Faddis as he looks for truth from those on the ground, in the middle of the action with key insights regarding critical national and international issues. Listen for discussions and interviews on national security, terrorism, politics, espionage, the paranormal, and weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome, I'm Sam Faddis, and this is Ground Truth, and we're coming to you today from WKCV 103.5 FM Keystone College. Going to be talking Second Amendment issues today, but specifically starting off talking about the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, which is growing in the United States, particularly in the state of Virginia. We have with us a guest who's going to help us illuminate these issues, I think with superb qualifications to talk about it, Ryan Gass, who runs a company called Practical Training Professionals, which is weapons handling and firearms safety and using guns and doing so correctly. Former United States Marine, I guess if you can ever really be a former United States Marine, and was a firearms instructor and weapons training guy in the Corps, which I would suggest to you puts him on a par with the best on the planet if you're teaching Marines how to handle weapons. Ryan, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
Ryan, we're going to range around a little bit on the Second Amendment gun rights issues, so-called gun control controversy, but I'd like to start right with what I first introduced, which is there is a growing movement in the country, but right now I think particularly red hot in the state of Virginia, which is a so-called Second Amendment sanctuary movement. And as I understand it, what we're talking about is a situation where basically at a county level, counties are announcing that they're not going to enforce any laws contrary to the Second Amendment. Can you tell us a little bit about what you know about the movement and what brought it on?
Yeah, so it was definitely a result of the elections last month, which, be quite honest, on my end, I was definitely kind of disappointed with different aspects of the elections when it comes to voter turnout, that and people just running for seats, because a lot of the seats that were won by Democrats in Virginia, and those are going to be now pushing against our Second Amendment rights, a lot of those went unopposed. So that was definitely very frustrating. A lot of people, as a result of those elections, they definitely are getting motivated and rejuvenated in order to get out there and get their voices heard, starting even on the city, the town, and the county levels. I believe it's over 30 counties now throughout Virginia are now, per se, a sanctuary city or sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, including but not limited to my own King George County, which we did that last Tuesday evening. We voted a resolution to become a sanctuary county for the 2A. And the basic idea behind that is that the county will not dedicate any type of resources towards the prosecution of any new state or federal gun laws that infringe upon the Second Amendment. I know a lot of counties have they have different wording here or there, but that's the main gist of it. I know with Buchanan County in Virginia, they even had at the meeting, they had their sheriff and their Commonwealth's attorney there, and they even asked them directly, if we do pass this resolution or this ordinance, will you follow suit with that and you not, be prosecuting these different types of laws? And those two gentlemen said, yeah, absolutely. If you pass the resolution, we will support it 100% and not enforce these such gun laws. So it's definitely been a movement that's been sweeping the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, and it's been taking politicians on the state level and even on the federal level are taking notice nationwide that Virginians are not going to allow their politicians to infringe upon their rights, and they're not going to take it lying down either.
So you made reference, I'm going to just walk over a couple of pieces of what you just touched on. So you're talking about elections, and obviously we're talking about elections in the state of Virginia and the results. And I gather the perception being in the state of Virginia that we've now got a state legislature that is likely to be hostile to the Second Amendment, that's going to take actions that are going to take firearms out of people's hands. Is that right?
Yes, sir, absolutely. They've been very outspoken about that before, and a lot more since afterwards, about how they expressed very deep desires to pass laws that would infringe upon our rights in Virginia, including but not limited to various things, red flag laws, magazine limitations, assault weapons bans per se, amongst other laws. And the left's going to be soon having both the House, the Senate, and the governorship. It's definitely going to be a fight. I don't know how it's all going to play out in the end, but I mean, with the amount of support for the Second Amendment being expressed now, I don't think they're going to get everything that they want. The left's going to get everything they want, but I definitely do think that we're going to be experiencing a different gun culture in Virginia, different types of gun laws, similar to that of Maryland. That's actually where I'm from. I'm actually born and raised in Maryland. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I came back to Maryland, but when I got out of the Marine Corps, I couldn't afford to live in Maryland, nor did I like the gun laws. So I took my family and we evacuated to Virginia, where I live now in King George. I've been there for about 6 years. And it feels eerily similar that we might be experiencing soon what Marylanders are experiencing now with their gun laws and their restrictions on their rights, and the amount of violence that's being experienced in Maryland, including but not limited to Baltimore.
Yeah, well, you're in King George, so you're basically right across the river from Maryland.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, having fled the state of Maryland 6 months ago myself, I'm identifying with your sentiments there. I hear where you're coming from. On a county level, I just want to talk mechanically here for a second, just for the purpose of kind of illuminating this for folks that are listening. So we have a state legislature in the case of Virginia, and I should add, Virginia is not the only state that has seen this movement. New Mexico, sometime back, saw the same kind of thing. But we have this move at the state level that has prompted this Second Amendment sanctuary movement in Virginia, which operates at the county level. And mechanically, how does this work? There's some kind of resolution that's introduced. The county adopts something. What happens legally?
So don't confuse me with being a legal scholar. I'm just a Marine. But no, generally speaking, how it's been playing out is someone will introduce and propose a resolution or even an ordinance, and the county will vote to have a hearing on it. There'll be a public hearing, which a lot of people have been turning out to. When they had our hearing in King George, I was one of the first ones to get there. The parking lot was empty when I got there. I got inside an hour before it started. I got seated. The room quickly filled up, and then the hallway quickly filled up. And then during the hearing, somebody said, "Hey, step outside, and you should see the parking lot." And I went out inside the parking lot, and the parking lot was full of people, and more people that I knew that even existed in our county. So during that hearing, they heard testimony, what the actual resolution or the ordinance would be, and then they actually heard open floor testimony. Because of the overwhelming amount of people there, and because they saw how the testimony was going to go, they proposed, and everyone agreed that they had the floor open for an hour, 3 minutes per person, and if you weren't able to speak during that hour, then that's when the cutoff was. And I was able to be one of the first individuals to speak, but we had over pretty much everyone during that hour that spoke was in favor of the 2A sanctuary. We did have two young ladies who respectfully disagreed and voiced their opinion in opposition of it, but by the end of the night, they took a vote, and they voted in favor of the resolution to make King George County a 2A sanctuary. So that's generally the gist of it. They proposed the idea, they vote, they have a hearing on it, and they hear both sides, and then they were making a vote. And I've seen the video. I didn't make it to all the different hearings, but a lot of times when I'm seeing the video coming out of the different counties, that's a lot of times how they're running their hearings and how the process is going. They're making a vote that night on whether to be a 2A sanctuary or not.
Right, and as far as I know, every county that's taken this up so far has in fact voted to become a sanctuary. Is that accurate?
I believe you're accurate, but there may be onesies, twosies in there that haven't yet, that voted unfavorably against it. I don't know that for a fact. But I know that everyone I've heard of that's had this, they have voted in favor of it. I believe, I said earlier, I think 30, but I think it might actually be over 40. I believe there's 90, correct me if I'm wrong, but there might be 93 counties throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And as of late last week, there were over 30 counties that were 2A sanctuaries. But with the end of the week happening, and then also now we're already into Tuesday, there were some hearings last night that I know went favorably. We may be above 40 counties that are now sanctuary counties. So you're doing firearms training, and obviously I would assume you're interacting with law enforcement. Your sentiment, and just watching this movement, that by and large law enforcement is supportive of this sanctuary movement? Again, from what I'm seeing and who I'm talking to and whatnot, different. Right. I've talked to city police and like local town police and sheriff's deputies and state police officers, and I've even talked to a few that may be on the federal level on different agencies. The people that I speak to that are in law enforcement on those different levels, they are in support of these measures. They are in support of the Second Amendment. They do not have any intentions or desires to be enforcing any new gun laws or even a lot of the old ones, both on state and federal lines. Yeah, I haven't seen really any pushback from law enforcement at all. You always got those onesies and twosies. I'm sure that they exist. I don't deny their existence, but I believe it was Culpeper, Virginia sheriff himself said that if he absolutely had to, in order to avoid prosecuting citizens on these different laws, if he had to, he said he would deputize his citizens. Because a lot of times with a lot of these gun laws, law enforcement are exempt from different laws. So he said, if I have to, I'll deputize citizens in order to gain what we're looking to do here.
Yeah, in fact, I think I saw the news report that you just made reference to. In fact, he said something like, if necessary, I can deputize thousands of people to do this.
Yep.
Some kind of
Absolutely.
reference. So let's shift gears here slightly in terms of Second Amendment stuff. What do you do in terms of your business and your training right now? I mean, bread and butter, what are you doing?
Short and sweet of it, we cater to average everyday citizens throughout Maryland and Virginia. We do primarily a lot of basic handgun and concealed carry classes, defensive handgun classes. You know, the end goal, you don't have to. When you take the class, you don't have to have any experience at all. We have everything provided. We start from the basics and work our way up with a lot of the classes, depending on which class it is. And our goal is to give citizens the knowledge and experience needed to more safely, effectively, and legally defend themselves and exercise their Second Amendment rights.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you and what I would expect to hear from anybody who's in your line of work is, this is all about responsibility. I mean, at the end of the day, it's obviously being effective, and God help you if you have to use a weapon in self-defense, being able to do so and do what's necessary, hoping that that day never comes. But that along with that, we're talking healthy doses of what's legal, what's not legal, and more than anything else, what's safe. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, all those factors are going to play into it. Safety, though, is the biggest focus of all my classes. Because like I tell my students, firearms are neither safe nor unsafe by themselves. It's how you use them, whether you're using them ignorantly, whether you're using them carelessly, or amongst a minority, maliciously. Firearm by themselves is not a dangerous item. Just like the vehicle, I happen to be sitting in my truck right now. My truck can be used carelessly, it can be used ignorantly, or it can be used maliciously, and it can cause death. Just like the Nice, France attack with the truck several years ago. I believe
Sure.
They killed over 80 people using a truck. Inanimate objects, firearms, cars, knives, folding chairs, they can all be used for the right and wrong reasons, and they can cause harm. It's all in how you use them. So safety is one of the biggest focuses in any of my classes, especially because it is what it is. A lot of the people that I'm teaching have sometimes little to no experience. So I have to really not just drill that home to them, but show them that, hey, this is not something to be intimidated about. Using a firearm is not something to be worried about or anything like that. But you do got to use common sense and a little bit of caution and just be aware of what you're doing.
Right. And the attitude that you confront's the wrong word. The attitude, I'm assuming, of the average person that's coming to you is that's exactly what I want, right? I want to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that puzzles me, and this is now I'm, interjecting my own personal opinion, which is clearly in favor of the Second Amendment. But one of the things that puzzles me often about so-called gun control legislation is, or gun control activists, if you will, my own verbiage, is this implication that everybody who has a firearm or wants to carry a firearm or wants to have a firearm in their home is somehow acting like Rambo, that this is cavalier, that this is, out of control, just inherently dangerous, and we need to get rid of these things. I have personally never in my life observed I'm not saying I've never seen anybody who is irresponsible with a weapon, just like I've seen people who are irresponsible with lots of other things. But I have never observed this to be a mass phenomenon. Very much to the contrary, that I would expect, particularly people coming to you for training who maybe don't know that much about firearms, that they're at the other end of the spectrum. They want to know how to have this thing and not hurt anybody, unless that horrible day comes when they got to hurt somebody in self-defense. It sounds to me like that's what you see all day, every day, is this kind of responsible attitude.
Right. The people that I deal with people from all backgrounds, religions. I have, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, all my classes. These people are not coming because they want to be, they don't want a backdoor way to be a cop per se. They don't want to carry firearms so they can go police their own neighborhoods. They are getting a firearm, whether for the first time or they're getting a permit to carry a firearm on them, because they are aware of the world around them and how dangerous it can be. Not that, every place and everywhere is dangerous. I may have my firearm on me the rest of my life carrying it and never need it. And that's what I would prefer. Just like I don't have a fire extinguisher in my house because I want to be a firefighter. I have a fire extinguisher in my house because of the unlikely event that there's a fire in my home. If I can do something to put out that fire or buy the firefighters more time to get there, I have that tool available. No one would go about trying to ban civilian ownership of fire extinguishers, water hoses, and things of that nature. But for some reason, when it comes to people wanting to take their own safety into their own hands and use a firearm in that way as a tool, for some reason that people want to limit that. I'm not really unsure how that is and why that is. But, like I said, the students that are coming to my classes, whether they have experience or whether they don't, they're coming just as a simple, measure of gaining training to be able to better defend themselves and their families, not to be some crazy Rambo or whatnot, like some people might say.
Right. And, another aspect of this, I want to come back to Virginia specifically in a minute, but just for a moment, another aspect of this that personally has always puzzled me is the idea. I mean, there's the level on which these gun laws, I think, are unconstitutional. And then there's a level on which it seems to me that many of these gun laws have been demonstrated to do nothing but impact legal gun owners and have absolutely no impact on crime. And you made reference to Baltimore before. I mean, Maryland already has incredibly restrictive gun laws. I'm a retired intelligence officer, former U.S. Army officer, carried a weapon on my ankle, on my hip, year after year after year, 24/7. I could not get a concealed carry permit in the state of Maryland, right? Maryland law not allow me, who's concealed carried on behalf of the U.S. government overseas undercover for a big chunk of his life, yet the state of Maryland will not judge me worthy of doing that. Yet at the same time that they have that level of restriction, the city of Baltimore is awash in gun violence and homicides. Per capita, in any given year, the most dangerous city in the country when it comes to homicides. There was probably no question in there. There was just a long speech from me. Let me bring you back to Virginia for a moment. You talked before about the legislature. And you made reference to a little bit of this, but I want to dig in on it. In Virginia, what are people that are behind this sanctuary movement, what are they concretely, specifically worried that legislature is getting ready to do?
A lot of it comes down to the red flag laws, firearms confiscation, limiting the ability to carry a concealed firearm and where you can do it and how you can do it. Virginia currently has reciprocity with over 50 different states. They recognize all 50 states. If you have a permit from anywhere in the United States, you're good to carry in Virginia. But one of the things that they very well will try to do is cut that back significantly. Prior to them recognizing 50 different permits, the Attorney General at the time, back in, I believe it was 2015, 16 maybe, he had taken it back and rolled it back. They recognized, I believe it was 27 states. They rolled it back to only recognizing 4 states. And then the legislature at the time, obviously, was pro-gun. They passed a law saying, nope, if you have a permit anywhere in the United States, you are good to carry in Virginia. I definitely see that as being one of the easy targets that they're going to try to roll the back of the reciprocity. It's going to affect, tens of thousands of people that not only live in Virginia, but also visit Virginia and bring their money and spend their money in Virginia, whether for work or for pleasure. So it's definitely going to have, different things they're wanting to do in Virginia are definitely going to have a huge impact on not only Virginians, but those who visit Virginia.
Okay, you made a couple of things here. One, you made reference to reciprocity. You're talking about concealed carry permits.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Red flag laws. For those people that aren't clear, what are we talking about? What are red flag laws?
So the long and short of it, and the details obviously can be ironed out, but the long and short of it, someone that has not committed a crime and can't otherwise have their firearms confiscated from them, someone, and in different states I word different way, but family, friends, potentially co-workers, things of that nature, law enforcement, they can petition the courts and have your firearms, have it decided that your firearms being confiscated from you, and you have no say in the matter up to that point. You have no idea that it's happening a lot of times until they come to your door and knock on your door. At that point, what you're expected to do is to turn over their firearms, comply, and then, like in Maryland, 10 days later, you'll have a hearing where you get to let the judge know why you should have your rights given back to you and have your firearms, given back to you. And if you don't, I believe in how Maryland has it set up, if you're not able to successfully do that, then I believe after 6 months or possibly a year, depending on what the judge decides, you're able to come back for another hearing and try to, again, receive your rights back that you were taken from you in the first place with zero due process. And that's the biggest thing that a lot of people have problems with is zero due process. You will have no idea that the red flag has been raised, I guess you could say, on you, and that your firearms are being confiscated until they are coming to confiscate your firearms. They are at your door. Like the one gentleman in Maryland, the first casualty in Maryland of that was last October, Gary Willis. And he was, the long and short of it, he was killed after he opened his door, had a firearm in his possession at 5 a.m. in the morning, and they have yet to release the body cam footage for that. But that was one of the biggest things with the red flag laws is there is zero due process in every state that has a version of it. And Virginia is wanting to follow that same suit. They find that acceptable by their standards.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I understand on some level the intellectual motivation behind the idea that there are dangerous people and maybe we should take their weapons away. But as applied, I find this a terrifying concept, and I think you did a great job outlining it. Basically, not only do I not have to be convicted of a crime, I never have to be convicted of a crime. As you described it quite accurately, the cops simply appear at my door and based on accusations I'm likely completely unaware of, they now order me to surrender my firearms. And,
yeah, and a lot of times the left will say, no one's coming to take your firearms, no one's trying to take your guns. Well, here they are. Well, no, that's just for the bad people. No, these are for law-abiding citizens. They have to create these red flag laws because they realize that they can't otherwise confiscate the firearms from these individuals. So they have to make an additional law, these red flag laws, that allow them to legally, not constitutionally, but legally confiscate these firearms from these individuals.
Yeah. You said before you're not a lawyer. My deep, dark secret is, in addition to everything else, I am a lawyer. And I, as a former lawyer, defense counsel, and prosecutor, I have no idea on earth how this is considered constitutional, because the Second Amendment is not a privilege. It's a right reserved to the people of the United States. Now, if you want to change the Constitution, have at it. But as long as the Constitution reads that way, I don't have to ask your permission to have a firearm. I have a right to have a firearm. I don't have any idea how the government can simply revoke my rights any more than they could show up and hand me a piece of paper and say, you no longer have freedom of speech, you no longer have freedom of religion. They can't do any of those things. And I don't understand how a right to possess a firearm is different. We're running short on time. I want to come back to your business. I'm somebody who wants firearms training. Either I don't think I know enough, or hey, I never even had a gun and now I want to get one and I want to know what the heck I'm doing. How do I find you? How do people get to you and your business?
Yes, sir. So our website is ptpgun.com. That's Papa Tango Papa gun.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Practical Training Professionals, and on Instagram we are at PTP Gun. But we post a lot of good information, keeping citizens not only up to date on our schedule and the training that we do, but also any type of new laws changing in their different jurisdictions and things of that nature. So definitely be sure to follow us on Facebook and the different social media platforms.
Okay, if I'm literally, thanks, and that's exactly what I was looking for, but I'm just address the issue here of people that maybe are just nervous about guns. I'm at that point. I feel like I want to have a firearm for self-defense, if nothing else. Not that there aren't other things that firearms are good for, but I'm, I am conscious of the fact that I don't know anything about firearms and nervous and worried that, I'm going to end up in a training course where it's going to be intimidating. People are going to talk down to me, that kind of thing. I'm assuming you're a pro. That's a concern people should not have. Like you're going
Absolutely. No, I'm actually glad you brought that up. We actually, for a while there, a lot of the classes that we were doing were just for women. We still do that class, but not as much as we used to because we trained all the women. But while I'm a Marine and I did training in active duty and all that type of stuff, I left that stuff at the base when I got out 6 years ago. It's a very non-intimidating atmosphere. I try to make people feel very comfortable in answering their questions. I don't laugh at anyone's questions. And while it's a stereotypical statement, there is no dumb question. A dumb question is to come to a class and pay, good money and to not answer that, not to ask a question. So I definitely try to make it as an inviting, comfortable environment and maintain that. If you will, it's a safe space for new gun owners to come and learn, per se.
No, I think that's great verbiage. Okay, well, Ryan, thank you very much. I appreciate you being with us today, man, and making the time, and I think it's a really important issue.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I definitely appreciate the opportunity, and definitely hope that all politicians listening to this remember that the part of the Constitution and the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. And lastly, I'd like to remind everyone listening that Epstein didn't kill himself.
All right. Well, that's a whole nother show we could do. Thanks. You have a great Christmas. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time on Ground Truth.